Hello there, Ben Bowers, the Spirit Specialist, and I am here today to talk to you about River Rock Single Malt Scotch Whisky. Can't really give you much more information about that because it is from a secret Highland distillery. This was actually suggested to me. It was a friend of mine, him and his wife are big whiskey drinkers. They were up in Keswick, some kind of food show or something like that. And he sent me a message and goes, "Oh, have you heard of River Rock? We've just tried some and really, really liked it." Got in touch with Mark, who's one of the three founders, sent me a sample, let me try it, really, really enjoyed it. I think it's a very good price point as well, which we'll get onto a bit. So I thought I would tell you about it, but it also brings in a bit of a conversation about marketing and terminology and things like that. So be prepared for maybe a rant, depends on how I got onto this. But before I go into that, let me give you some background information about River Rock itself.
Launched in November 2020, River Rock Single Malt Scotch Whisky is the end result of 3 years of work by Mark Geary, Laura Anderson and Bill Farrar, who had all previously been directors with the Edrington Group, brand owners of the likes of Highland Park, Glenrothes and Macallan. Attempting to make an approachable, easy-drinking, sweeter style of whisky, the brand also has a commitment to the environment, partnering with sustainable companies and charities, including the John Muir Trust, resulting in a tree being planted for every bottle sold. In addition, the creatively named wonky bottle is made from recycled glass, meaning every single bottle is unique in colour, while still evoking a tactile and natural shape. The whisky itself is sourced from an unknown Highland distillery, with no age statement given, although it is stated that maturation takes place solely in ex-Bourbon casks. River Rock Single Malt Scotch Whisky is bottled at 40% ABV.
Right then, so that's the information. Not much information, to be honest. And again, you know, can I open that? Yeah, I just didn't think I'd got the right bottle. This is a sample bottle that I now have that I can share with customers to allow them to try. So if you go to the River Rock website itself, there is not a lot of information about the whiskey. There are some brief tasting notes, but the majority of the website goes on about the bottle, the wonky bottle, wonky whiskey. I mean, you know, wonky whiskey is a pretty kind of snappy sort of brand name to be using around. But they do go on about the bottle, they go on about the efforts that they're making in terms of kind of environmental preservation, the charity that they work with, all of this lot, everything outside of the liquid itself. There's not a lot of kind of explanation, description about the whiskey. It's just they worked for 3 years on it, they've got it from Highland Distillery, it's very easy drinking, and here's all the other stuff we're doing, which is fine, because if you're using a secret distillery, and this is common practice within the industry, a lot of brands will source their whiskies from other distilleries, they'll buy it from there more often than not at a reduced rate than if you were going to, you know, its volume or that sort of thing. They'll be buying it, they'll be putting their own label on it, they won't say where it is. So we don't really have any age statement. Well, we don't have an age statement on this, but we don't have any indication as to how old the spirit is. It's a single malt, so we know it's from one distillery, and they have said it's a Highland distillery. That's it. So there could be a combination of ages in here from the same distillery. It could be as low as 3, it could be as old as 50. Who the hell knows? There's no indication as to, say, the average age. And that's kind of something that doesn't wind me up, but it would be very good to know some of these no age statements, at least the range. You know, what's the range of whiskies? What's the average age? You know, and is it because the average age is under 10, there is this fear, this reluctance of the entire whiskey industry, apart from new distilleries that are just like, no, this is how old it is. You know how old it is because you know when we started distilling. There's this reluctance to admit that you might be using spirit that's under 10 years old. There's still this sort of perception that whiskey starts at 10, particularly with Scotch. So I don't know sort of what the ages are in this, what the average age is, whether it's a range, you know, oh, there's some as young as 5, but there's some as old as 20. We just have no idea whatsoever. And we just know it's a Highland distillery. Well, that doesn't really narrow it down because there's a lot of Highland Scotch distilleries. Regardless, the thing that has wound me up a little bit with this is if you were to search River Rock and you look at other whiskey websites or drink-based websites. Now, I got sent a presentation from Mark when we were talking about bringing it in, the pricing and everything like that. And there is no mention of this on the presentation that he sent me. It's four pages in a PowerPoint presentation, and there is no mention of this whatsoever. Now, I've got my laptop because I tried to print it out. My printer wasn't working. But I have cut. This is from 3 different websites that talk about River Rock. And they all say the same thing. So this, in fact, that's my printer working right now, printing the thing off that I've got on here. Thanks very much, printer. So useful. They all say the same thing. So this suggests to me that this has been essentially a press release that has been sent out by the team at River Rock to these websites, and in one case, a newspaper, because they are all taking the same quotes. They are all saying exactly the same thing. This is not 3 independent writers, journalists, whatever you want, bloggers, whatever you want to call them, conveniently, coincidentally writing almost the same sentence word for word. When you see the same sentences, the same words on different websites, check the author. Is it the same author and they're just freelancing against the same ones? Or it's more likely if it's different authors on different websites, then the brand itself has sent that out and they are literally just cut and pasting the information so that it sounds like they know what they're talking about. So, according to these 3 different websites, different authors, they all say, so, top whiskies. The flavour profile and taste come from the whiskey being taken from higher up the copper still during distillation than other single malts, and from the spirit being matured in ex-Bourbon barrels. We have another website. The mouse now isn't working on this. In fact, my laptop's not working at all. Today we have something brand new, River Rock Single Malt Whisky, a limited batch release Scotch. To achieve this, they select, providing a sweet dram with no alcohol burn. To achieve this, they select spirit from higher up the still, spirit that is lighter and fruitier, which is then aged in American bourbon casks. And then we have the Courier, the Evening Telegraph. The flavour profile and taste comes from the whiskey being taken higher up the copper pot still. So, I have a question. What the fuck does that mean? Because being taken higher up the still, you have 2 types of still that are being used in whiskey production, particularly in Scotland. You have the pot still, which is the big bulbous bottom that then goes up to a swan neck, and it runs, the spirit condenses at the top, runs off, and then it goes through a condenser. So you get the vapors that are running off, evaporation, the alcohol compounds within that, they go to the top of the still, they run off, if they're light enough to kind of hit the top and run off, and then that's when it condenses back down into a spirit. If it's not light enough to get to the very top, it falls back down, something called reflux, and it's essentially redistilled. The other still you have are column stills, which looks a bit like a flute on its end because you get these holes coming out, and you can put something called rectifier plates in, which are plates that the spirit goes up, and at a certain point, depending on where you put these plates, the spirit can basically get onto that plate and then run off. So you can, if you want, put plates higher up and take a lighter spirit or lighter evaporation, lighter, fruitier, whatever you want to call it, or you can put plates lower down the still and you can take the thicker, heavier ones. Now, this says single malt Scotch whisky, and Scotch Whisky Association regulations say to be called single malt Scotch whisky, it has to be made in a copper pot still, not a column still. And I'll give you an example of what happens if you use a column still. Spearhead, which is made at Loch Lomond. This is 100% malted barley that is distilled in a column still, not a copper pot still. And because of that, and this says on the label, 100% malted barley. Because of that, it's not a single malt Scotch whisky, it's a single grain Scotch whisky. Even though it's 100% malted barley, because it's been in the column still, it has to be called single grain because of the Scotch Whisky Association regulations. This says single malt Scotch whisky, quite clearly on the label. So it has to be from a copper pot still. How do you take spirit higher up a copper pot still? It comes off at the same place. It goes to the top, it comes off. There is no door in the top that you can get a pipette in or a hose and suck stuff out. You don't stick a bloody Dyson in it and suck it out higher up. You don't have multiple arms coming off copper pot stills. So this, I am now getting a bit ranty because this is a bit of a marketing bullshit term that is kind of giving the excuse of, oh, this is how we've made it lighter and easier to drink, that is technically meaningless. It means nothing. But what it does make me think is going on about the spirit going higher. We don't know what the distillery is. We just know it's a Highland distillery. Now, Mark and Laura and Bill previously worked at the Macallan. They worked with Highland Park. They worked with Glenrothes. So they all worked with Edrington. And so they've obviously got contacts within the industry. They would know people that work in big brands and little brands and all sorts of things like that. The distillery with the tallest stills in Scotland, famous for it, quote it all the time, tallest stills in Scotland, Glenmorangie, which is a really, really easy drinking whiskey. I've got the whiskey in the glass here, now that I've kind of finished ranting. If they're taking the spirit from higher up the still, the only way you can do that if the still itself is taller than other stills from other distilleries, because it's going higher. It's going further up before you're running off. And you've got a fruitier, lighter spirit, which Glenmorangie is. So straight away, not by process of elimination, but by kind of thinking about, right, what can you do? Okay, you can't physically take spirit higher up a pot still. You can a column, but then you can't call it a single malt. You've got to call it a single grain. So if you've kind of gone, oh, we've got tall stills, right, well, how can we make it sound more interesting? How can we make it sound not more technical, but how do we make it sound more impressive? Well, we take the spirit that's gone higher up. Well, yeah, because it's a really tall still. So my gut instinct is that this is Glenmorangie. You know, straight away, without even trying it, just by looking at it and going, well, that's nonsense. You can't take it from higher up a pot still. So what do they actually mean? It's misinformation. It's not lying. It's not lying, because I don't think they are taking it from higher up still, because you just can't. So it's just a misinformation. It's using words to make it sound different, rather than going, because if they said, you know, oh, the spirit actually, it goes up the tallest stills. Well, everybody's going to go, oh, well, it's Glenmorangie then, because they've got the tallest stills in Scotland. So is it some subtle clue to, well, actually, this is the distillery that we get it from, but it's not making it clear, and it's actually misinformation that people don't know. Sounds, oh, that sounds impressive. Oh, they take the spirit from higher up from what everybody else is doing. It doesn't happen. It can't physically happen. It's absolute nonsense. But out with that, if the spirit's not any good, I ain't going to sell it anyway, because you can have all the marketing bullshit you want, whatever. I'll call it out, but if the liquid's still good, I'm still going to sell it. But I will tell people, they've said this, no, it doesn't happen. It's not true. But the liquid is still good, and if it's still good value for money, I will still sell it in my shop. Because the people that are making the whiskey, or the people that are putting the whiskey together, or that are sourcing the whiskey, if they've done a good job, I will happily say to people, this is a good whiskey for this price. Ignore all the marketing bullshit around it, but the actual liquid inside, what's inside here, is the most important thing. And, you know, there are so many marketing teams that seem to forget this is the important bit. What's inside this? Have all the stories you want, all the backstories, all the technical terms, all of this lot. What matters is what's in this, because that is what goes down your neck. All the backstories, all the things about the family history and all this lot is meaningless if what's inside that bottle tastes like crap. And it's a really nice bottle as well. I do love the bottle. I don't really blame them for going on the bottle. It feels nice. It's one of those bottles that just feels nice in the hand. So, after the rant, hey Ben, what's the actual bloody liquid like? I will tell you. On the nose, soft. It's like orchard fruit. It's apple pie. It's like a soft apple pie with whipped cream. It's a really fruity nose. There's like there's orchard fruits. There's apples. There's pears. There's like peach, white peach. It's soft. There's a little touch of sweet spice running through. That's why it reminds me of apple pie with kind of like a sprinkling of crunchy sugar on the top, but also a little bit of nutmeg in particular. It's lovely and soft and inviting and warm. And, you know, at the time of filming, we're at the end of, so we're just about to go into September. September is tomorrow, in fact. So we're just getting to that end of summer where things are starting to feel, I'm wearing a jumper. Yesterday I was wearing a short sleeve shirt. It's kind of like days where it's getting a little bit chilly, but it's still a little bit warm. And it's got that feel of it where it's warm and inviting and it will warm you up, but it's not big and sherried and heavy and everything like that. It's really, it's soft, delicate, but round. It noses like it's quite creamy. And then on the palate, that absolutely continues. You get a little bite of oak right at the end. Now, there are going to be some people that drink this and think this is boring as hell. Because, admittedly, it's not the most complex whiskey in the world. It's not got loads going on with it. The nose is orchard fruit, a touch of spice. The palate is orchard fruits, bit more of that whipped cream that was on the side of that kind of apple stroke pear pie. But we're not talking tart tatin, it's a proper apple pie. Custard, soft whipped cream, that sort of feel. There's a lovely creaminess, which has got to be those bourbon casks coming through. And it almost suggests to me it's first fill bourbon because of the intensity of that creaminess that's in there. There's a little bite of oak right at the end. So if this is young, the youthfulness of it, you know, this is not 4, 5, 6 years old. If it is, it really surprises me. I think this is, you know, there is some old whiskey in here as well. Maybe, you know, 15, 18, something like that. There is a lovely, rich, silky texture to it. It's very, very easy drinking. Probably too easy drinking for proper hardcore whiskey drinkers that want complexity and want richness and want smokiness and all of this lot. But this is absolutely a whiskey for anybody. Anybody's going to like this. Mainstream whiskey drinkers, hardcore whiskey drinkers when there's nothing else available. The whiskey snobs, they're going to turn the nose up. Don't care about you guys. You've got, and I say you guys because more often than not they're men. This is one of the most approachable whiskies I have ever come across. And that is not a bad thing at all. I really, really like this spirit. I don't like the story around it. Oh, no, it's not I don't like the story around it. I don't like elements of the marketing around it. But that is, to me, it just screams kind of people that have worked in big corporations, brands, marketing, all of that lot. They just can't help themselves. Whatever. The most important thing is what's in here. And what's in here is really, really good. Yes, it's not the most complicated thing in the world, but sometimes you just want a whiskey that you can go, oh, that's nice. And anybody can go, oh, that's nice. Yeah? It doesn't have to be heavily peated. It doesn't have to be an absolute sherry bomb. There's a time and place for those. There's a time and place for that. With dinner, it's not an after dinner whiskey, it's a with dinner whiskey. Or friends have come around, they've just arrived, one of them fancies a whiskey, give them that. Nearly everybody's going to like it. There are going to be some people that aren't going to like it because it's so easy drinking. Get over yourself. This is really, really nice. And it's acceptable to absolutely everybody that isn't just, that doesn't think they're better than they are. I love this spirit. I think it's a really good price point. It's $34.99, and some of you will be thinking, well, it's so approachable, it's so easy drinking. How is it as much as $34.99? That's kind of what the whiskey market is right now. This is where we are. It's a single malt Scotch whiskey, so it's a single malt. You've got a premium because it's single malt. Blended malts tend to be more expensive because you've got that cost of being involved in getting it from different distilleries. I do think this is Glenmorangie, just based on the flavour profile, based on the texture, based on the fruitiness, based on that light body, based on what they've said about where they're getting it from the still, the fact it goes higher up than any other distillery. I do genuinely think this is sourced from Glenmorangie. I am absolutely happy to be proved wrong, and I'm happy for Mark or Bill or Laura to get in touch and go, don't tell anyone, Ben, but it's actually this. Because I'd be really interested to see which distillery it is, because it might be a distillery that I'm not a massive fan of, but you know what? It's not. The only one I think of, actually, while I'm looking at the shelf, Deanston, maybe, because Deanston Virgin Oak is kind of got that fruitiness. Now it's got me thinking. I was convinced it was Glenmorangie, but it could be Deanston as well. Anyway, irrespective of that, I'd be really interested to know what it is. But this is a very, very good whiskey. If you have a whiskey collection and you like sharing whiskies with your friends, and you've got some people that don't really do whiskey, or you want to introduce people to whiskey, give them some of this. If you want a bottle that you can just happily drink whenever, you don't want to kind of waste your good whiskies on just a regular Wednesday evening after work, but you fancy a dram of something that's really easy drinking, and maybe you're doing something else. You're watching telly, you're doing some work, you're reading a book, whatever, and you just want something to sit that's not going to get in the way, but it's just going to, kind of be there for you. Absolutely that. And it looks really nice on the shelf. This is totally a whiskey that needs to go on bars, be it the on-trade or home bars. This absolutely needs to be a whiskey that, if you've built your own home bar, my brother-in-law has just done that. We were over there at the weekend. He's got a shed out the back. I say a shed. He's got a pool table and an arcade machine, and he's built a little bar, and he's got bottles on the back that are boring as hell. Bailey's, Whitley Neal, all this lot. And I'm looking at this going, come on, mate. I've got a shop of really interesting stuff. That's what he's getting for his birthday. Spoiler, if you're watching, Carl, you're getting one of these, whether it's birthday or Christmas, because it looks really cool on a back bar, but it's also a damn good whiskey. So, out with the rant, which I feel is justified and annoys me because I don't like people bullshitting consumers. And that's why I opened this shop, and I will call it out. Even if I sell you, I will call it out. But for me, the most important thing is what is inside the bottle. And I think for $34.99, I think that's really good. I think where we are with the Scotch whisky market, the fact it's a single malt Scotch whisky for $34.99, that's where single malt Scotch whisky comes in now. That's how much it is for good stuff. And this is good. Really, really good. It's not trying to be fancy. It's not trying to be technical, despite what some of the marketing was doing. It's just trying to be a really good single malt Scotch whisky that many, many people can enjoy. And it absolutely is. I think this is really good. And that is why I am selling it. Because if it wasn't any good, yeah, I'd probably call it out on Facebook, but I wouldn't sell it. Because I can see past the marketing nonsense. And that, for me, is the important bit. Inside there, and inside there is good. So do buy it. It's worth it. Don't read the websites that talk about, oh, we've taken it from higher up the still. You drill a hole in it, you put a Dyson Hoover in it, you sucked out the spirit. You put a hole in the top of the still, so instead of it going out the arm, it went a bit further up and you hoovered it out the top there. I don't know. I don't even know what it fucking means. As you can tell, it's kind of wound me up. But the whiskey is really good. That's what calms me back down again. And that's why I'm happy to sell it. So that is me done. It is available through the website, www.spiritspecialist.com. And if you come in the shop, I have quite a bit left, actually. So, you're more than happy to try it. And I do recommend it. And I do recommend picking up a bottle. There are certain whiskies that I'll turn around and say, you might want to try it first. I genuinely believe you buy that, whether it's a present or for yourself, and you like whiskey, you're going to like this. Unless you are a whiskey snob, in which case I can't help you. Right, that's me done. I'll see you at the next one. Cheers.